Today I'm going to talk about artifacts. I like coins, but what really thrills me is artifacts, pieces of the past. And today I'm going to pull some of my most favorite artifacts I found. Just take a look at them, see what you think. Like I said, history is the reason that I do this. I'm not looking for pennies, quarters, and dimes, although that's a good way to start. I'm not knocking it. So don't anybody write in and say, oh boy, coin hunters don't like me anymore. That's fine, it's good practice, but I'm a big hunter of artifacts. Here in Central Florida, one of my favorite artifacts to hunt are steamboat artifacts. And steamboat artifacts are quite prevalent throughout the area. This was a huge area of the country back in the mid and 19th century for steamboat activity, of which very few people even realize it, I believe. So as a result, I'm a big steamboat artifact connoisseur, and artifacts from that time period with the military, the Indians, Seminole Indians, all that. So most of my hunts occur on private land because you can't really find anything in parks much anymore, and if you can, they want to confiscate it. So a lot of my hunts here in Central Florida are on private land that were near some of the central lakes that saw a lot of steamboat activity here in the mid-19th century. So I have one particular artifact I'd really like to show you. This is not going to be a long video, but I'd like to show you one that I found that I'm rather proud of because I actually researched this from one end to the other and pulled it right out of the ground. So here it is, one of my favorite recoveries, steamboat artifact.
Well, here we have an 1870s era bronze strap and ring. This I found about, maybe 3 or 4 inches deep in an area that was once frequented by a lot of travelers and a lot of industry in Oviedo, Florida. This is the maker's mark on this item is from Wilcox-Crittenden in Connecticut. There's their mark, the CW, that's what it means. This is used on steamships, or rather steamboats, and you screw that down, and it's a sand casting. Bronze. It shows a classical defects. You can notice it's a sand casting. I'm looking at this through an eye loop about a 10 power. You can see there's scratches on there where it was filed, and there's bubbles. You can see a small ridge along there. That was a sand casting. Possibly there were some defects. But this part doesn't seem to have been used. I don't know if it doesn't show any marks where you would put the screws. This is the crew, the Wilcox-Crittenden factory workers, in a photograph from 1847 in Middletown, Connecticut. They are the manufacturers of this piece. You can see the bubbles if you take a close look in the part. There's some bubbles from the rough casting. It looks like something that you could use right now. Actually, I guess you could. You could put some screws in that, tie it to your sailboat or your steamship, and tie up or run some lines through it. Great piece. Next, we've got a item that I found near what was at one time, about 100 years ago, a steamboat landing. I found this about 5 or 6 inches deep in the dirt. It's a rough cast iron bottle opener. I don't know if this was used on shore or it might have been on board one of the boats, but it's an interesting item. It has kind of an odd finish to it. Been in the ground for a while, so I can see why it would, look this way. But still pretty sturdy. I bet I could probably still open bottles with this thing. I don't know. I seem to think maybe it was on board one of the boats originally to open beverages. Here's an interesting item I found. This was about 6 inches deep. Again, near another steamboat landing off of Lake Jessup near Oviedo, Florida. This is a tin type. These were very, very popular from the mid-1800s to the early 1900s, the early 20th century. This is made on a piece of iron. Even though they say tin, they weren't actually tin, they were iron. This probably dates from 1870 through probably 1910, somewhere around there. They were very popular in that time. I don't know who he is, and I don't know where he's from, but these were popular at fairs and things during the 1870s through the early 1900s. Apparently this is something somebody got at a fair or somewhere, and they were either bringing it home. It's only 1 inch by like 1 inch. It's very, very small, but it's lasted probably 100 or more years in the ground. After I cleaned it off, you can see some of the enamel on it is cracked. I got a close-up I did. I scanned it into Photoshop and I actually enlarged it to take a look and better define the portrait here that's been laying in the ground for probably over 100 years, 120 years. Here it is. Here's what the young man looks like. I wonder who he is. And I'd like to thank everybody for watching. We'll see you again.